We are going to use our trig functions again to find some more exact values. Alright, here's a situation where I gave you a sine ratio and I gave you a cosine ratio, and you need to find the 4 remaining trig functions. So, first of all, I'm going to start you with tangent, and with this particular one, you don't need to really do too much work because tangent, you know, can be written as sine over cosine. And so in this case, you'll have negative 3/7 over 2 root 10 over 7. Okay? Instead of dividing by a fraction, I am going to multiply by the reciprocal, so I'm going to multiply by 7 over 2 root 10 instead, and cancel that out. My 7's will drop, and then I will be at negative 3 over 2 root 10. I can't have a radical in the denominator, so I am going to multiply by root 10. And then I will have negative 3 root 10 over root 10 times 10 is 10, times this 2 out in front will be 20. So there's my tangent value. Okay. So I have sine, cosine, tangent. Cosecant, we know, is the reciprocal to sine. So cosecant, instead of having it be negative 3/7, cosecant will be negative 7/3. Secant is the reciprocal to cosine. So secant will be 7 over 2 root 10. And again, I cannot leave a radical in the denominator, so I will multiply by root 10. And I will have 7 root 10 over, and then root 10 times root 10 is 10, times 2 is 20. And then the last one that I need to find is cotangent. And cotangent is the reciprocal to tangent. So cotangent will be 20 over negative 3 root 10. Okay, again, can't leave a radical in the denominator. So I will have negative 20 root 10 over root 10 times 10 is 10, times 3 is 30. And then, of course, the 20 and the 30 can reduce, so you'll have negative 2 root 10 over 3. Okay? Some of you can picture that I could have done that a lot faster by going back to this part right here and just taken the reciprocal right here and just flipped that, and you would have noticed that it would have been faster. But for those of you that need to see it the long way, there you go. All right. I don't know why my formatting is kind of funny on these new Smartboard lessons, but they are. Sine is supposed to be negative 3/5. So let's see, what is shaken down here? Let's do this. This is what I want. I apologize for this. But sine is negative 3/5 and tangent is 3/4 is what I'm looking for here. And you need to find the remaining trig functions. Okay, what you're going to need to do here is kind of set up a triangle and picture this. If you have a triangle, and I'm going to draw one here, and I am going to call this my theta, okay? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So this is your opposite side, and this is your hypotenuse. Notice that that ratio is negative 3/5, and your hypotenuse can never, ever, ever be negative. And you're going to think about this also on the unit circle. I should actually probably draw this triangle on the unit circle and think about it that way. Sine is negative, and sine is negative down here in either quadrant 3 or quadrant 4 is where your sine value is negative. Tangent is positive 3/4. You can see it's a positive number. 3/4 is a positive number. And tangent is positive in 1 and 3. So I know that I'm actually in quadrant 3 because it's the only quadrant where my sine has a negative value and my tangent has a positive value. Okay? So I actually know I'm in quadrant 3, and I'm going to draw my triangle in the actual quadrant so that we can talk about position as well as distance. Okay? So I know that I'm down here in quadrant 3, so now this is my angle. Again, your hypotenuse can never ever be negative, so this will be 5. right here. This is your hypotenuse, okay? It is also your radius, just so you know. And then your sine value, which is your up-down value, or it is also your opposite, or your y, will be -3. And then clearly when you're in quadrant 3, your x value is negative as well. So you kind of need to pay attention to what quadrant you're in. Your x value is negative, and if you do a squared plus b squared equals c squared, your adjacent, or your x value, will be -4 because it's to the left of the origin. Okay? So you have to pay attention to what quadrant you're in. You're going to be tempted to go like this. Well, sine is y over r, and tangent is y over x. And then you're going to get yourself in trouble because because these look like they're both positive, and they're not both positive. Okay, they're actually both negative. A negative over a negative makes a positive, so be careful about that. Okay, once you have your opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse, I think it's pretty easy for you guys to figure out the rest of your trig functions. You could figure out cosine now by going adjacent over hypotenuse and plugging that in, and I'm not so worried about that, okay? So once you know which sides are your adjacent, opposite, hypotenuse, you can either use the reciprocals of these, like I could find cosecant really easy because it's the reciprocal to that. I could find cotangent really easy because it's the reciprocal to that. But I would need to know my adjacent side in order to find cosine and secant. Okay, here's another one, similarly. And again, I'm going to pay attention to what quadrant we're in. Okay, I can see that sine is a positive 3/7, so sine is positive in quadrants 1 or 2. This means that tangent is negative because it's less than 0. Tangent is negative in 2 or 4. So clearly I'm working in quadrant 2 because it's the only place where my sine value is positive and my tangent value is negative. Okay, so now if I draw my triangle in quadrant 2, again, I'm going to use my x-axis as one of the sides to my triangle every single time. Here's my angle. So my sine value is positive. Sine is my opposite, or my y, which in this case is 3, over my hypotenuse, or my r, which in this case is 7. And then this will be your adjacent side. Notice you're in quadrant 2 and you're moving to the left, so you know it's going to be a negative number. And so then when you do a squared plus, I'm going to call this x squared, y squared plus x squared equals 7 squared. You'll have 9 plus x squared equals 49. So x squared equals 40. So x is either positive or negative root 40. And that, of course, is going to break down. And it will be either positive or negative 4 times 10, which of course is positive or negative 2 root 10. And we know in this case it has to be negative because I'm in quadrant 2. Excuse me for a minute here. All right, so I know this side is negative 2 root 10 right here. Okay? And again, it's negative because it describes position and distance. And then again, once you know that, you can find the remaining trig functions pretty easily. Clearly, I can find cosecant very easily because I can just say that it's reciprocal to sine. Okay? And I'm just going to find a couple more. Let's say that I want to do secant. Okay? Secant is adjacent, or hypotenuse over adjacent, which would be 7 over negative 2 root 10. Can't leave a radical in the denominator. So I would have 7 root 10 over 20, and then of course that's a negative number. Okay? And then I could find cosine really easily because it's the reciprocal to that, and I'm actually going to go back to this step right here and take the reciprocal of it. So that would be negative 2 root 10 over 7. Okay? And of course I could keep going and find the other trig functions too. I'm not going to take the time to do that right now, but that's what you would do. And then on this one, again, I'm just going to worry about finding the opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse and paying attention to where you are. Okay? So this one I actually gave you a quadrant to be in. This tells you what quadrant you're in right here. You're between 270 and 360 degrees. This is 270 down here. This is 360 over here. So you know you are between those two values, which means, of course, you're in quadrant 4. So again, you're going to use the x-axis as one of your sides. And then you will draw your handy-dandy little triangle. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, or your x value. So your adjacent, or your x value, would be positive 4. So this is, again, adjacent over hypotenuse right here. So your hypotenuse, or your r, would be 5. And then again, if you find x squared plus y squared equals r squared, you can figure out this pretty easily. So you'll have 4 squared plus y squared equals 5 squared. Y squared will be 9, and y will be then either positive or negative 3. And because you are going down in this case, you're in quadrant 4, and so your y value, or your opposite in this case, would have to be negative 3 because you're in quadrant 4. And then once you know that, of course, you can figure out sine is opposite over hypotenuse, all that. You can figure that out, no problem. Okay, so hopefully that will do it for you, and we will see you next time.